What the hell? It's starting already.
Here we go.
Let me talk to him. Let me talk to him.
Welcome to the Matt Schneidman Show.
That's a guy who is an intriguing one because he was an undrafted free agent.
Follow Matt on Twitter and Instagram at Matt Schneidman.
This is good stuff.
Or use the talk and text line at 1-414-799-1973.
If he can carry over what he's done in practice to games, then maybe we could start talking about, okay, Packers might have something here.
Now with Doug Russell, here's Matt Schneidman on the game.
Matt Schneidman Show, Monday, January 15th. We're still rolling. In-season edition. The Packers have not lost yet. I don't even know where to start yesterday. I was stunned sitting there in the press box in Arlington watching it. We'll get to, my travel nightmare at the end of the show. Nobody cares about that. We're going to dive
I want to
into
hear all about it because I was following all along with it.
No. The people are here for Packers talk. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing a sweatshirt that says Minnesota, when I hastily packed my stuff to try and get to the Minneapolis airport on Friday in time for my flight, I just threw a couple pieces of clothing in my bag, did not plan packing at all. So I get off the plane in Minneapolis this morning on my flight from Dallas, and it's about, 11 a.m. It's -8 degrees outside, and all I had was a bomber jacket and like a white T-shirt underneath. So I had to buy a sweatshirt at the airport to wear in my car, because if I didn't, I probably would have frozen. So that's the only reason I have a Minnesota sweatshirt. Don't get angry at me. It's Timberwolves colors. It's not purple. Everyone pipe down.
I was going to ask, I know it looks like Timberwolves colors. I didn't know if that was an actual Timberwolves sweatshirt.
I don't think so.
No, it just is up north.
Yeah. But it's comfortable, and that's all that matters. All right, let's dive right in. Packers 48, Cowboys 32. The Packers advance to play the top-seeded San Francisco 49ers not next Saturday night, this Saturday night, 7:15 p.m. Central Time in Santa Clara. The boogeyman, the San Francisco 49ers, who have knocked the Packers out of the playoffs in 2 of the 3 years Matt LaFleur has been in the postseason as Packers head coach. Before we get to that game later in the week, where do we start? Let's start just with the quarterback, because that's the most important position in sports. I don't know what adjective I would use to describe Jordan Love anymore, but we're running out of them. Stupendous, exemplary, Hall of Fame. Is that an adjective? No, not yet.
Not yet.
Listen.
If you base it off of this year, maybe.
If he keeps up this pace, then absolutely.
Yeah.
He got the help of his offensive line, Aaron Jones. We'll get into all that. The defense obviously made some big plays, one turning directly into 6 points. But Jordan Love's ability to have a feel for the pocket, the play I'm thinking of is when he scrambles to his right, stops on a dime, cuts back left, hits Romeo Doubs for, I think, 26 yards on 2nd and 13 on the opening drive after a penalty. Oh, no, it was after the 3-yard loss by Aaron Jones on his second run, I believe it was. How about the touchdown to Dontavian Wicks? In the face of pressure, I believe it was a 0 blitz. Off his back foot, leaning back, 32 yards, 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So it was a 20-yard touchdown pass, but from the 32-yard line, dime to Dontavian Wicks. Or how about any other instance that he was pressured? Jordan Love was only pressured 4 times, so it wasn't a lot, despite the Cowboys leading the league in pressure rate in the regular season at 44.7%. They only pressured Jordan Love on 4 of 21 dropbacks. But on those 4 times he was pressured, 4 of 4 for 114 yards and a touchdown. He was really, really good. And perhaps his best play, and I want to read you a quote from one of his teammates about the play, was his touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs.
Incredible.
To wrap it up.
It was incredible.
I was surprised the Packers went for it. I thought they were just going to kick. Matt LaFleur is very, very fond of Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was the Falcons head coach when Matt LaFleur was the quarterback's coach there in 2015 and 2016. But man, that was a F you, we can do whatever we want against your defense call. And Jordan Love kind of drifted back into his right, And if you're watching it from the wrong angle, you think, okay, sidearm, nice tight window to Romeo Doubs. If you watch it from behind Jordan Love, the fact he got the ball in there is ridiculous. I believe it was Curse and DeMarcus Lawrence who somehow missed it. Jordan Love literally threw it through them. And I'm not talking like they were on either side of it. I'm talking literally through them. Let me read you a quote from Jordan Love's center after that play. This is from Josh Myers. I didn't even celebrate because I was just standing there with my hands on my hips looking at Runyon like I couldn't believe the throw I had just seen. I don't know what it looked like from the TV, but it was one of the craziest throws I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of crazy ones. Kenny Clark added, that sidearm throw, I said, damn, that was crazy. That boy, elite. So those are the 3 plays I mentioned in my story as the Pittsburgh Steelers just scored to cut it to a 1-score game with 10.5 minutes left. Those were the 3 plays that stuck out to me from Love. But 16 of 21, however many passing yards he had, I don't know the exact number. Let me pull it up right here. 272, 3 touchdowns. And if not for Tucker Kraft's drop in garbage time, it's 158.3 passer rating, which would have been the first perfect passer rating for a quarterback in his postseason debut ever.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, he had to settle for a 157.2, which wasn't even the highest passer rating on the weekend because C.J. Stroud also had a 157.2 against the Browns.
It was a Hall of Fame performance. And any way you slice, listen, Jordan Love's got a long way to go before he's a Hall of Fame player. Hell of a season, hell of a second half of the year since the Pittsburgh loss, 21 touchdowns to 1 interception. But this was a Hall of Fame performance. This is something that reminded me, and I know I keep going back to 2010. I understand that. But you have to understand that Aaron Rodgers wasn't Aaron Rodgers yet in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on this magical run, and everything fell Green Bay's way. At the end of the regular season, they were playing, in essence, playoff games, because if they would have lost either of those 2 games at the end of the year, one to the Giants and then the season finale to the Bears at Lambeau Field, ironically, they wouldn't have made the playoffs. They got in because of a tiebreaker as the 6th seed. They had to go on the road to Philadelphia. They weren't favored, obviously, against the Eagles. And then the next week, they had to go to Atlanta to take on the number 1 seed Atlanta Falcons. The game against the Cowboys reminded me of a combination of Super Bowl 45, where Pittsburgh just, Ben Roethlisberger kept throwing interceptions, and the Packers cashed in on those, and the Atlanta Falcons game in the divisional round, where it was a virtuoso performance from Aaron Rodgers, really the first virtuoso performance that showed the rest of the world that he had arrived. He hadn't won an MVP award yet. He has obviously 4 of them, but he hadn't won his first one yet during the 2010 season. And he showed the world that he can carry a team on his back. It just reminded me of those things. A lot of ball game left. There's still many more weeks of football to go before you can put those 2 side by side. But that's what it reminded me of. It was a virtuoso Hall of Fame performance from a player who is starting to show the rest of the world that he can be, and maybe already is, an elite quarterback in the National Football League.
You want to know why you're comparing it to 2010? Because they might win the Super Bowl this year.
They might.
They might. Let me say something. There was that stretch in the middle of the season where I could not pick a game right. For the life of me, I've gotten 5 in a row correct. Going back to the Buccaneers loss, I picked them to lose that game, win their final 3 in the regular season. I picked them to beat the Cowboys. So I've got 5 in a row. So the streets are clamoring. They want to know, Matt, what's your pick? Are you picking the Packers to beat the 49ers? No, I'm not. But it's not as far-fetched.
As Wisconsin just went, wah, wah.
It's not as far-fetched as I would have thought 2 days ago. We'll get into that matchup down the road, but, this one started with Jordan Love, but they couldn't have done it without Aaron Jones either.
Mm-hmm.
I think his first 10 carries went for 27 yards, but there were 2 touchdowns in there.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that was important is that they stuck with the run. They didn't say, first 2 runs, 0 and -3 yards. Let's abandon it. I asked Aaron Jones about that after the game, and he said he was glad they stuck with it because guess what that does? And Jordan Love, talked about this too after the game, how the threat of a run or sticking to it, establishing the run, not only set up the play action game and the passing game, opened some things up there, but it keeps the Cowboys pass rush on its heels because they have to compensate for the threat of a run. They can't just pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. John Runyon talked about it yesterday, how part of the reason why the Packers were so good in pass protection, keeping Love's jersey clean, Cowboys ranked 7th in sack rate this season, didn't sack Love yesterday, only had 3 quarterback hits, and I mentioned the pressure rate earlier. Micah Parsons had his lowest single-game pressure rate of his career, 1 pressure in 19 pass rush snaps, I believe it was, 0 pressures on 9 matchups against Zach Tom. Runyon talked about getting the running game going. And sure, Aaron Jones maybe didn't start well, but as they wore the Cowboys down, wore them down, punch, 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 Aaron Jones reeled off a couple big ones. Aaron Jones said, sometimes there are 2 holes that I can go through, and sometimes he hesitates because they're both so big that he doesn't know which one to go through. And it wasn't just the offensive line. One of the plays of the game that I noticed, when the team posted the highlight, I didn't notice it watching the game live, and something Matt LaFleur pointed out unprompted after the game was if you watch Jones's 3rd touchdown run, Micah Parsons is coming off the edge from the strong side, and Josiah DeGuara comes across the formation and cut blocks him, knocks him to the ground, and then Micah Parsons kind of tries to get back up, but DeGuara is still in him. So he slips again. Aaron Jones behind Zach Tom for a touchdown. It's just a whole team effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yes, Jordan Love was really good, but the Packers don't do what they did yesterday without Aaron Jones in the running game, who 8 rushing touchdowns in his 3 career games against the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium.
He loves playing there. He and his dad used to go there and watch Cowboys games. The Cowboys were his team when he was a kid. And, not that Dallas and El Paso are close to each other. They're not. It's still a good 8-hour drive, but it's also the closest thing that there is to an NFL team if you live in El Paso. So it's just special for him. And I think going to AT&T Stadium hits differently for him. The Packers are 6-0 in that building. They beat some damn good Cowboys teams in that building. And, I don't know if Mike McCarthy survives this. I guess we'll find out this week. But the Packers dialed up everything that they needed to dial up. And they also did it with different guys, though, too, because you look at Jaden Reed, targeted 3 times, didn't have a single catch. Bo Melton, 1 catch. Christian Watson, 1 catch for 9 yards. And Romeo Doubs, 6 catches, 151. Luke Musgrave, 3 catches for 52 and a tug. Dontavian Wicks.
You say tug, too? Why do they say tug?
It's what the kids are calling touchdowns now.
Oh.
Coach is doing it.
I know. One of the best moments from postgame was, and Musgrave stayed on his feet, and then the team erupts. Yeah. And I didn't realize it. In the moment, I said, that's the play call of the year. After the game, Jordan Love, unprompted, said, that was the same play we ran in week 1, where Jordan Love botched the snap, essentially, fumbled the snap, had so much time that he found Luke Musgrave, and Musgrave tripped on the Soldier Field grass, or he might have just tripped over air. And I think it was like a 37-yard catch, should have been a touchdown, but it wasn't. They do it again yesterday. Musgrave starts on the left side of the formation this time. I believe he started on the right side against the Bears in week 1. There's the fake handoff right. Jordan Love rolls back left, and Musgrave leaks out from the left side of the formation, kind of runs sort of a shallow cross, then an up. There's a name for it. It's not coming to my head right now. But he was wide open, catches it at the 14-yard line, doesn't trip, makes it past one of the safeties, number 1, I forget who it was, to get in. And Matt LaFleur couldn't help but smile when he was asked about that post-game and said, yeah, we had a nice moment celebrating that in the post-game locker room. And we obviously saw that in the video tweeted out by the team. But my point there is it was a total team effort. We talked about the main players on offense, Jordan Love, Aaron Jones, the offensive line, but it was guys like Josiah DeGuara, like Luke Musgrave, Dontavian Wicks. If you watch that swing pass to Aaron Jones for a first down deep in Cowboys territory, Dontavian Wicks is out there laying a really nice block. We've seen Malik Heath do that in recent weeks. Jaden Reed didn't have a catch. We talked last week about how he's the best receiver on the team. He didn't have a catch. But guess what? It didn't matter because Romeo Doubs was just not covered all night. 6 on 6 targets for 151 and a touchdown. It's crazy how this team I'm using the Pro Bowlers reference because it just speaks to the lack of maybe incredible stars on this team, even though there are several in the making, Jordan Love being one of them. For the Packers to be one of 4 teams without a Pro Bowler, the other 3 being the top 3 picks in the upcoming draft, Cowboys had, I believe, a league high 7 Pro Bowlers. I'm guessing that was the league high. I know they had 7. And to go in there with their number 1 wide receiver, supposedly, Christian Watson, obviously limited, their number 1 cornerback, obviously banged up, but he comes up with a pick. And it's not that they won, it's how they won. And like I said, the total team effort, we're just talking in this first segment about the offensive side of the ball, the contributions they got from everybody. And it wasn't even just Aaron Jones in the running game. On one of the big completions, I think it was the 39-yarder from Jordan Love to Dobbs, Aaron Jones comes in, I don't know if I would call it stonewalls, but he blocks Micah Parsons well enough to give Jordan Love time to make that throw.
Mm-hmm.
You could pinpoint so many things from the offensive performance yesterday that stood out and said, this is why the Packers did so well. This is a dangerous offense to play. I don't know if they can replicate this against the 49ers, but if they can, they might win that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might. And again, things can line up. Don't ever say that they can't, because we've seen this story play out before. And they took advantage of everything that the Cowboys gave them. Every mistake that Dak Prescott made, both interceptions led to points. One was a pick six. Everybody was contributing, like you said. I mean, I don't want to invoke James Starks and Jarrett Bush for crying out loud, but those are not household names that helped the Packers do it 13 years ago. A lot of ball game left, for that to happen again. The way that it's lining up, it's just reminiscent of it. So I'm not going to count this team out against the 49ers by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't think anybody should. And I sure as hell don't think that the 49ers should. That would be stupid on their part, because I think the Cowboys maybe took the Packers for granted a little bit, or at least that's kind of the way that they came out of the blocks. I don't know that was under the direction of Mike McCarthy, because, we talked about whether or not he was going to be puckered last week. And I think that maybe he was a little bit puckered, but it wasn't because he was taking on the Green Bay Packers. I think it was because, he may have coached his final game for the Dallas Cowboys. So it was, I sensed early on the way that it was going. And to me, Wayne didn't throw his dagger until the third quarter. I threw mine in the second quarter and got a lot of response on the Twitterverse on that. It's too early. You can't do that. Take it down. Delete this. And I'm like, said what I said, man. This game's over. It was over at halftime. This game was over at halftime.
I don't know about that. I think if the Cowboys came out and scored a touchdown on their opening drive, it would have been interesting. You can obviously say it was over in hindsight, but I don't think it was. Anyway, that's the offensive side of the ball. I said
what I said.
Yeah, but it's easy to say, oh, I was right when you were right.
Right, I know.
But if the Cowboys come out and score a touchdown and make it a 13-point game, then it gets a little dicey. That did not happen, obviously. The Packers held them, speaking of defense, to I think it was like a 5.5-minute drive for 3 points. They would take that all day. After this first break, we're going to dive into the defensive side of the ball.
Bills just scored again.
Yes, they did. Now, 32 points doesn't look great, but anyone who watched the game knows the Packers defense played much better than that, and knows that in garbage time, half of those points came. So I don't know if it's a definite yet, but Joe Barry might be saving his job. We're going to get into that after the break. Stick with us right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on The Game. Matt Schneidman Show, Monday, January 15th. Diving into the stunner that we saw yesterday at AT&T Stadium. Packers 48, Cowboys 32. Packers advance to the divisional round as the 7th seed, the first ever 7th seed to win a game in the NFL playoffs. Can they knock off their boogeyman, the 49ers? We will see. We'll dive into that later in the week. We touched on the offensive side of the ball in the first segment of the show. Now we're going to get into the defensive side because old Joseph Barry might be inching his way back into a job for 2024. Do I think he's safe for next year? I'm not sure. If they beat the 49ers, I will give an unequivocal yes to that question. And as I said before the break, if you look at the final stat line for Dak Prescott, 41 for 60, 403, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. 2 guys go for 100 yards. Cowboys rush for over 100. You think, defense, man, 32 points. If you watch the game, though, it was 48-16. Packers just gave the Cowboys 2 easy scoring drives. Matt LaFleur took starters out. Packers defense played really well yesterday. Dak Prescott had 1 multi-interception game this season. Throws 2 in the first half, both of which the Packers convert into 7 points. Jair Alexander is obviously giving the Packers a short field. And Darnell Savage he just turned into 6 points himself. Both plays where the Packers DB read the route perfectly. Alexander for Brandon Cooks, and Savage kind of just read Dak's eyes when he was going on that slant to CeeDee Lamb. Took it for a 64-yard pick six. Yeah, they didn't sack Dak as much as they probably should have. Rashawn Gary still kind of nowhere to be seen relative to what we've seen him do at times this season. But that sack by Keyshawn Nixon was big. The Packers had 4 sacks, actually. Preston Smith in garbage time. My point is, they had 4, but it seems like they could have had more. And that's a good sign when they still play well, but it feels like they could have had more. It starts with Rashawn Gary. He's going to need to, make more of an impact. And I'm sure there is some hidden impact there, even though it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. I'll have to look back at the all-22. I've been driving all day, so I haven't had a chance. But I'm sure Rashawn Gary's eating up double teams and chips and freeing up stuff for other people. But he's got to do what he did in that Lions game if the Packers want a chance against the 49ers. But that Keyshawn Nixon sack was huge. The Preston Smith one to kind of stop the bleeding there at the end. Jair Alexander with the pick. Darnell Savage with the pick. These are the kinds of impact plays that this defense is capable of. But we just haven't seen those plays consistently enough. Joe Barry, just like we said during the struggles, we don't know how much is his fault. We don't know how much should be his credit when the defense is now playing really well. But he's got something to do with it.
Sure.
You see how pumped he is in the locker room? Those are his guys. They seem to be playing, for themselves, but also for him. And one more performance like that, and he's back next year. He might already be.
Yeah, I was asked by a coworker here at the Megaplex, who is a sports fan, but I wouldn't necessarily. He asked me a lot of sports questions, which is great. But he was asking about Joe Barry and whether or not he has coached his way back into a job. I'm like, he might. I think actually the question was, if the Packers do anything less than get to the Super Bowl, he's still gone, right? And I said, I don't know. He might be back unless, if the 49ers put up a 50 burger on him and the defense, then we'll have a different conversation a week from today. But it's possible because in crunch time, when it's the most important, they've showed.
It's crazy how we got to hear from the disheveled, defeated Joe Barry, who was at the podium after the Panthers game, admitting that his back was against the wall, admitting that it had been a tough week for him and his family.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand. Matt LaFleur shouldn't and won't let 3 games dictate his view, his evaluation of 3 years. But it's a what have you done for me lately league, and there's something to be said for when his back was against the wall. Joe Barry dialing up these 3 performances when the Packers needed to win these games. So there was one play yesterday where I said, man, that's a good Joe Barry call. Maybe the old Joe Barry wouldn't have done that. It was 4th and 5. Cowboys were just clawing clean to any sort of hope to stay in the game from their own territory. Joe Barry sends a zero blitz, it looked like, and Dak just throws the ball up and it flutters incomplete, turnover on downs. That's how you have to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sit back 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage and let them keep everything in front. You be the aggressor. You have the personnel to do it. You take the initiative. Don't wait for the offense to come to you. You go to the offense. We've seen that the last couple games from Joe Barry.
Yeah, it almost seems as though there was a philosophy change, or when the heat was turned up and we were all asking Matt LaFleur the question repeatedly to the point where he said, I'm going to address this one more time and then that's it. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and they'll never tell us, nor should they tell us. But I would imagine there was, hey, what you're dialing up isn't working. And everybody's seeing it. Not only laypersons who see the final score, but NFL experts, guys that played the game, guys that understand what they see as opposed to what they think they see. And they're all questioning what you're doing. So what are you doing? And, I'll always defer to somebody who knows more about the game than I did, somebody who, played at a high level and somebody who coached at a high level. They know far more about football than I'll ever know. And when they're saying that Joe Barry's schemes aren't working, I'm going to take that to heat. And I think Matt LaFleur did as well. They just seem more aggressive. It's easy to say that the execution is better. Then the execution has been better. But the schemes seem to be working better as well. The aggressiveness seems to be working better, and you see the results on the field. You see, against the Bears last week in the final week of the regular season, how they got after it, how they got after Justin Fields. They played an amazing football game against the Dallas Cowboys when they had to in the wild card round. But, it's been 3 weeks of this since the Carolina debacle that almost ruined the Packers season, that almost ended, in essence, the Packers season. You can't let the Carolina Panthers put up 30, and yet they put up 30. And then there was, I don't know if it was a come to Jesus or if it was, listen, this isn't going to work. You better figure something out. Well, the Packers figured something out. Joe Barry figured something out, and these guys executed for him. There's something to be said about players not quitting on their coach. And not that I think that there's a bunch of guys in the locker room that would do that this year. But we've seen it in the past where there have been guys that just kind of cash it in. I give the players credit. I give the coaches credit. I give Matt LaFleur credit for staying with it as well. But I also don't think that it would have behooved him when their season still had something to play for before they were mathematically eliminated to try to, fire Joe Barry and elevate somebody from the staff, because that would have left them shorthanded for games that they needed to have a full coaching staff for too.
Without a doubt, there are a couple notable injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Kingsley Enagbare seems to have torn his ACL. That's what Ian Rappaport reported. We could kind of infer that from Matt LaFleur's tone after the game. It was very somber. Some folks in the locker room, I was not in the locker room for the majority of it. Post-game, I was in the podium room for Aaron Jones, Jordan Love, and Matt LaFleur. But those in the locker room said, Enagbare was distraught with a couple minutes left in the game. He walked past us outside the locker room, limping very heavily off the field and through the tunnel. So that's a tough loss for the Packers. And Enagbare has made some really nice plays this year, both on defense and special teams. He has played 41% of the defensive snaps this year and 45% of the special team snaps. So that's no simple replacement. That's a good chunk of snaps. You're going to see more Lucas Van Ness probably. You're going to see Brenton Cox Jr., the undrafted rookie out of Florida, active most likely against the 49ers. So they have to compensate for the loss of Enagbare. And LaFleur raved about him today. Just how he's made plays, how he goes about his business. So that was a tough loss that hit the Packers hard. And LaFleur mentioned how Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, and Jason Rebrovich, the pass rush coach, were standing outside, I believe it was a medical room, inside the bowels of AT&T Stadium, waiting for Enagbare or waiting to go in to see him. Guy means a lot to the team. I know it's not a guy you think of when you think of, all right, main players, stars, impact players, but he's been a solid role player, so the Packers are going to need to compensate for his loss. The other one, obviously, is Jair Alexander. He said he got 5 to 6 hours of treatment during the day after stepping on a foot and twisting his ankle during last Wednesday's walkthrough. Got more treatment at night. Warmed up on the field yesterday, and only then, Matt LaFleur said, sorry, I had to cough there. Did he know that Jair was going to play? Then obviously Jair comes up with one of the biggest plays of the game, reminds people why he's the highest paid corner in NFL history, and then injures the same ankle, the left ankle that he had taped up during warmups again. Matt LaFleur said that Jair would not have gone back in the game if it was closer, because I asked him, were you just resting him because it was a blowout? LaFleur said he wouldn't have gone back in. So that's going to be one to watch. Walking off the field, Jair didn't have any noticeable limp, but walking is different than sprinting and cutting and changing direction. So I would be shocked, maybe not shocked, surprised if Jair practices this week. Matt LaFleur did say today it's mostly going to be jog through, walk through type stuff with maybe some live reps at the end of the week. But a short week, week 20 of the season, they're going to take it light. So the one to watch is Jair. Isaiah McDuffie, another one. I believe he picked up a stinger yesterday. That's after he dealt with a neck injury and a concussion 2 weeks ago that caused him to miss a game. That'll be one to watch because he's made some nice plays this season. Other than that, it seemed Christian Watson came out of the game healthy. He didn't have a full Christian Watson workload. He was only targeted once. 1 catch for 9 yards. So you think that was just to kind of get him back in the groove of things? I saw Andy Herman posted a screenshot of Watson going deep and kind of opening up space underneath for Romeo Doubs, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken. We've talked about it on this show multiple times. Even if Christian Watson is not catching 50-yard passes, just the presence of him makes defenses have to account for him, which opens stuff up for others. So we'll see if he's participating in walkthroughs later this week. Romeo Doubs, a week after he's coughing up blood, goes for a career high. These guys are fighting through injury. I'm not exactly sure what the 49ers injury situation is. I'm sure it's not lengthy because they didn't play this past week. But we'll see what these injury report estimations look like when they come out on Wednesday. Packers have no availability tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and not Friday, actually. So just 2 days of availability this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday's the travel day.
Are you surprised at all, speaking of travel, that they're not going out early?
No.
Okay. I mean, I know that they discussed it. At least that's what LaFleur said during his availability today, but he wanted to keep everybody in their rhythm, which, I mean, I get, but, you know, it's 2 degrees here and it's going to be in the 40s and 50s in Santa Clara. So I don't know if
I can't wait. It was 5 degrees in Dallas.
Well, again,
it was dumping snow when we left the stadium.
I go back to Super Bowl 45 then, because that was our whole week there.
Arlington, sorry.
Yeah, Dallas area, the Metroplex.
I go to Texas.
Yeah.
For warmth. It was freezing cold.
Yeah.
Like,
talk to Spoon or talk to Pete or talk to Wildy or anybody who was there. Oh, yeah, it's all true.
I've heard the stories. And guess what? I was in the elevator at my hotel, and I was just going down to the front desk to get something. And I was in a short and t-shirt, and there were people in the elevator, clearly from Texas, astounded. They called me out. They were like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm from Wisconsin. This is normal." But even for someone who lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin, it was cold. It was brick out there. It wasn't as bad as some days I've seen in Minneapolis and Green Bay today because it's in the single digits. But the snow was whipping when we left AT&T late last night, a little after 11 p.m. I can't wait to get out to San Francisco, though. 40 degrees sounds so nice right now.
Well, you used to live out there, too, so I'm guessing you have some friends out there, too.
No, I didn't really have many friends out there. I just know the whole 49ers beat crew pretty much, which I always love seeing those people. Shout out Jerry McDonald, who covers the 49ers for the Mercury News out there, my first employer. He took me under his wing as a 22-year-old, first covering the NFL back in 2017. So I'm looking forward to seeing some good folks out there. Marcus Thompson, the Steph Curry whisperer. So I can't wait. I'm looking forward to a Saturday night game because it means I get to get out of Green Bay a day early. I'm flying out Friday, have some family in the San Ramon, San Jose area. So a little Friday dinner there, an uncle and aunt and 2 cousins. So I'm looking forward to that. Always love going back to San Francisco. I was there for a wedding this summer. California is always a good time. The flight, not great, but I'm looking forward to it. I will say this. I think the Packers have a chance.
I do too.
I think the Packers have a chance. Matt Barrows and David Lombardi, who cover the 49ers for us at The Athletic. Matt Barrows wrote a story, and here's his tweet headline. The 49ers are a bit like the Death Star. They are an overall awesome power, but there are also a few cracks we discovered on close inspection. One of those cracks is kickoff coverage. Keyshawn Nixon is a first-team All-Pro kick returner. Now, we will see if they treat him like Brandon Aubrey did and just kick away from him. I haven't studied Jake Moody, their rookie kicker from Michigan, too much, so I don't know how strong his leg is, how much he kicks it out of the back of the end zone. But if their kickoff coverage isn't great, I would imagine that they're allowing some returns. Just inferring that there without diving deeper into it yet, as I will later in the week. If the Packers can reel off a couple chunk returns with Nixon and set themselves up with some good field position, that's a good start. And guess what? This team feels different than teams of years past against the 49ers because this team has nothing to lose. This team is playing with house money. They're playing loose. I'm not saying the last, couple years in 19 and 21 they were playing tight. And sure, Mercedes Lewis holding on to that ball when they were about to go up 14-0 would have helped in the 2021 divisional round. But those teams were coming off first-round buys. I know in 2019, the 49ers were the 1 seed, Packers were the 2, but there are no expectations with this team. We saw what a team with no expectations can do when they're heavy underdogs yesterday. Why can't they do it again?
I don't think there's any reason that they can't do it again. And, if you were of a certain age, here's just an illustration. I know that the 49ers are the boogeyman for the Packers right now in the postseason. But a generation ago, that team was the Dallas Cowboys because the Packers got their season ended by the Cowboys 3 straight trips to the postseason. And, there are even some Packers fans of a certain age that view the 1996, the Super Bowl 31 championship, as somehow tainted because they didn't go through Dallas. They didn't have to play the Cowboys in that postseason, which I think is ridiculous, but that's what some said at the time, and some still hang on to that. And right now, the Packers own the Cowboys. There was a time when the 49ers were ending the Packers seasons in the playoffs in the 90s as well, and then things kind of turned around, and the Packers started to do that. The Packers beat the 49ers in the 1997 NFC Championship game before going on to Super Bowl 32 and losing it to the Denver Broncos. So, recent history isn't great, but there are a lot of things that have changed with the 49ers over the last couple of years. They've got a new quarterback, for example, who's played at a pretty damn good level.
Packers have never played Brock Purdy.
No, and they've never played Jordan Love either. So there's some differences there. I'm saying I think they have a chance. I don't want to disrespect San Francisco because they're a great team. They're a fantastic team. They're the number 1 seed for a reason. But I do think the Packers have a chance. I absolutely do because of all the things that you mentioned, and they're peaking at the right time. You don't have to be the best team in the NFL. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen example after example after example, not just in football, but in all sports. You don't have to be the number 1 seed. And most of the time, if you are the number 1 seed, you're going to get bounced. Didn't help the Bucks last year being the number 1 seed. They got bounced in the first round by Miami when they did win their NBA championship in 2021.
Basketball. You confused me there.
Sorry. Yeah, not the Buccaneers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the basketball team.
It's a football show, Doug.
I know. This is the second straight show that I've talked basketball on a football show. But the Bucks were the number 3 seed when they won the NBA championship. Meanwhile, they were the number 1 seed the 2 years prior to that and the year after. So you just have to be the hottest team at the right time. You don't have to be necessarily the best, and the Packers are playing as good a football as anybody in the world right now.
And Jordan Love's playing as good football as any player in the world right now. Try and guess what the spread is. I just looked on ESPN Bet. The spread for Packers 49ers is?
-8.
-10.
Oof. Okay.
That's big.
That's big. You don't usually see double digits in the playoffs.
There's a question I have that we'll talk about after the break. Can the Packers go perfect on field goals and extra points against the 49ers? I'm not sure they can.
I don't think they can either.
But it would certainly help.
It would be a nice change of pace. We'll put it that way.
We'll finish up this edition of the Matt Schneidman Show after the break. Stick with us right here on The Game.
Hold on, girl, I got the right tactics to turn you on. And girl, I wanna be the papa, you can be the mom. Because the girl them broke out on the floor. From you don't wanna work this performer. From you don't wanna man, we can't turn you on.
Jock says, let's go. Not here we go like Dak Prescott and maybe Jordan Love. I don't know if Jordan Love was trolling him. I am going to ask Jordan Love that on Wednesday. That would be legendary if he did a here we go in garbage time to troll Dak Prescott. I'm not sure if he did, though. I don't know if Jordan Love would do that.
Rich Bisaccia gave us a nice how about them Cowboys coming in through the tunnel.
Yes, he did. He did indeed. Anyway, Iron Jock says, let's go. Now through January 21st, when you buy $50 or more of Iron Jock performance apparel, take 25% off everything in your cart with promo code FITNESS25. And you'll also get a free Iron Jock script baseball cap. It'll automatically be added in your cart, and you get to choose which version of the cap you want. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com. Believe Anders Carlson missed his 6th PAT, technically 5th. One was blocked. 5th PAT missed. That ain't going to cut it.
That's not good.
There's one time this season where it's kind of come back to bite them, and that was the time when it was blocked against the Steelers because they had to go for a touchdown instead of a field goal on the final drive. But, you know, Matt LaFleur shouted out the kickoff coverage team after the game. Kevontae Turpin is a darn good kick returner. Packers held him in check for the most part. I believe he had one about 40-yard return. Daniel Whelan, 3 punts inside the 10. He got a shout-out. Luke Musgrave and Jaden Reed got shout-outs for recovering onside kicks. Anders Carlson did not get a shout-out, though.
No.
Got to make your PATs. We keep saying it might come back to haunt the Packers. It still hasn't. But it still might. There's a chance.
Yep. Sure could. And anytime that you miss an extra point, I don't know if it's the mindset of the coach who feels like he has to chase that point that they missed. So then you see extra 2-point conversion tries. Sometimes they're successful. Sometimes they're not, obviously. Just feels like you're chasing it the whole time. Yeah, it's 33-yard field goal. Got to make a 33-yard field goal. In the NFL, you're being paid millions of dollars. Better make that 33-yarder. I know it's not as easy as an extra point used to be when they were 20-yarders, but you got to do I mean, that's part of the job. You have to make almost every single PAT. You could miss maybe one or two, but Anders Carlson, it's become an issue where they just don't have clean games. Anders Carlson just doesn't have clean games. And you know, I know it's a 3-man operation, but most of it falls on the kicker, it seems. When the snap is okay and the hold seems to be okay, kicker's got to adjust. Kicker's got to make it through. And he hasn't been.
Without a doubt.
And that's what we talked about all throughout the preseason, too. It was just one of the recurring themes of preseason. Is the rookie kicker going to be consistent enough? And
the answer is no.
The answer is no. I mean, he's got a strong leg. We all know he's got a strong leg, but it has not been consistent.
It's got to be more consistent if the Packers want a chance. Because, listen, it's a 1-game season every week at this point. So it's not like there's going to be a 6-game stretch where he's going to, get a chance to iron some stuff out. Some games where he takes 3 field goals, some games where he doesn't. Like, it's a 1-game season. So he's not going to get a long runway to figure this stuff out. He's got to do it now. Because who knows? The last time these two teams played in the playoffs, they had a field goal blocked. They had a punt blocked and returned for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
They had 10 guys on the field to defend Robbie Gould's game-winning field goal attempt.
They lost that game. They lost their season because of special teams. Now, the offense sucked that day, too.
Terrible,
the offense was off. But they lost that game on special teams as well.
They did. Anders Carlson, we just talked about the other parts of the special teams that were largely exemplary for the Packers yesterday. The kicking game still needs some work. All that being said, I'm going to give my prediction early in the week and stick with it before I know too much about the Packers' injury situation or whatever. I'm going to go Packers 23, 49ers 31.
I was going to say earlier in the show, you said that you're not
Yeah.
picking them to win.
I just went the other way
yeah.
to throw some people off. 31-23 49ers. Oh, I think the Packers have a shot. I really do.
I do too. They're like you said, they're playing loose. They're playing together. They're the hottest team in the NFL with the hottest quarterback in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, in their last 9 games,
If they win
21
this game,
touchdowns to 1 pick.
If they win this game, that how incredible would that be? Packers go to Detroit or Philly or Tampa for the NFC Championship game.
Yep.
Packers. If the Packers win this game, I'm picking them to win the Super Bowl. But still a lot of football to play.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of this season. Is the Packers can almost lose to the worst team in the league. They can destroy one of the best teams in the league. They can beat the Chiefs, and then the next week lose to Tommy DeVito. Nobody knows what's going to happen. The Packers have, I will say, generally played much better against the better teams than they have against the worst teams. At least the second half of that's not necessarily true because they beat the Vikings and the Bears. But you get my point.
Yeah.
It's kind of the reverse of what we think is going to happen with the Packers this season. Remember when they went 7 straight games not eclipsing 20 points scored?
Yeah. Remember when they went a month without winning a game?
And guess what? Since week 11, I think it was. Week 11 when they beat the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
They've scored more than 20 points in every single game except one since week 11. And in that game, they scored 20.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And they scored 30 once in the first 14 games of the season. And then in the last 3 games, they've scored 33, and 48, and then 17. But still pretty incredible how far this offense has come in. As I said last week, if you have an offense playing like this and you have a quarterback playing like this, you will always have a chance. To win the game, you need the other phases to make a couple key plays here and there. The Packers just happen to get more than a couple key plays on Sunday. They might not need that many against the 49ers. Sure, it might be a tighter game, but they might not need that many. 49ers are a better team, though. Will they beat them? I don't think so, but we will see. I'm going for 6 straight picks in a row. We're going to talk to Wayne Larrivee tomorrow here on the Matt Schneidman Show, get into much more about Packers 49ers. Big game on Sunday in Santa Clara. So we'll talk to you then. For Doug, I'm Matt. Appreciate everyone for listening.